Okay. Okay. So this conversation is going to be all about how to forgive and accept other people. All right. So you may want to be able to think about, a person, a group, or something like that in which you might feel a grudge towards, or you might have some resentment or anger or pain or distress towards. I could give a really hypothetical example, and I would say, as we discuss this, maybe imagine having like a really like harsh, mean-spirited boss, or maybe like a harsh, judgmental parental figure or family member that's very mean-spirited and stuff. Like, if you don't want to relate this to somebody, or you can't relate this to somebody within your own life that you're having difficulty accepting and being at peace with, then you can take a hypothetical example. Okay. So we're really going to go through this in terms of game changing it. So we're going to take this stressful situation and we're going to process it through what's good, what can be learned, how can we make it better. And through that process, we'll be able to develop greater wisdom, understanding, and be able to develop the attitudes that'll put us at peace with everything. So I'm going to hit a. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is that if we're not at peace with somebody, we want to appreciate all the good the situation has done for us. Okay. As painful as it might be, let's unpack the benefits. So, what are some things we should consider in terms of unpacking the good a situation has done for us? Does anyone have any thoughts on something we should ask ourselves or things we should take into consideration? And by the way, before we even start this, I should just give a little disclaimer that there is a perverse enjoyment that people get from holding a grudge. Okay. Straight up. It's just human nature. And we have to thwart that in order to be free. We have to thwart that perverse enjoyment of holding grudges and negativity towards people in order to truly acknowledge the good that has come out of a painful experience. We have to admit that the suffering has been beneficial in some ways, right? So, because a lot of times people have some token resistance. So, I'll give you an example of a question we might ask. Let's say you have a really harsh, judgmental family member. You might say, are you now more wiser because of this? Are other people wiser because of this experience, perhaps by being involved directly or learning about it through you? Did you learn better survival skills, or did you learn a greater self-sufficiency? Did you learn about the capacity for other people to be deceitful or hurtful, or to avoid or deny personal responsibility? Did you learn more about trust and integrity? Did you learn a greater appreciation for directness in communication? Are you more aware of warning signs? Did you learn about setting healthy boundaries? In summary, through all these things, did you learn how to be more careful? Okay. I might also ask, did you gain greater clarity on your own weaknesses and limitations and opportunities for improvement? For example, maybe you learned that certain environments are stronger than your willpower. Maybe you learned that to be careful with certain negative influences that can have an effect on you. Maybe you learned to set a higher standard on gaining clarity and understanding. Maybe you learn to set a higher standard on how you let other people treat you, right? We might also have gained, I might ask, did it help you clarify what you want and don't want in your life? Perhaps emotions that you no longer want in your life, environments, situations, the types of people you have in your life, right? Another question would be, are you now more driven and motivated to become your better self? Usually it's when people go through hard times that they want a better life. For example, let's say somebody breaks up, a guy dumps his girlfriend. She may then try to get fit and sexy to prove her worth to her ex-boyfriend. But as she becomes wiser, she realizes it's best to be her best self for her own self, right? The idea, maybe you got the forward moving momentum first, and then you purified your motives later on, but that's okay as long as you get moving, right? We could ask, did you ultimately learn how to better focus your time and energy as a result of this? Did you learn how resilient you are to be able to endure and survive all that's happened, where a lesser person might have given up completely or killed themselves, right? And considering everything we discussed about this person in this situation, could you accept that in some way they served as an educational experience that helped you reach for your higher potential? Some people are teachers and some people are teachings, and their example inspires us on how not to be. I'd ask you, how have they helped create you and shaped you into being who you are? So something to reflect on. So does anyone have any thoughts on these questions in this way of looking at the people that we might harbor a little bitterness towards? Joel, what are your thoughts?
I think it's really challenging in the moment when it's all very fresh to kind of like transcend that sense of, resentment, whatever you want to call it. It's they always say, it's the poison that you drink that you hope will hurt the other person.
Mm-hmm.
But really it just, hurts you. Yeah, I've had a lot of experiences where, from being engaged 3 times before being married, where each one kind of fell apart spectacularly. Um, the first time, like, she got pregnant by another guy, and I tried to like patch it up afterwards and was trying to help her out because she was in a bad place. And then it happened again, and I was like, maybe it's not meant to be. But so I mean, like, and being in love at a young age, like, it's easy to feel resentment, but it's like, and again, in the moment, it's hard to separate it. But when you have a little bit of separation of time, like, you can totally see how my life was, like, guided exactly where it needed to be, and that person too, like, exactly the way it needed to unfold. I also had a stepdad that my mom married, when I was in my teens, and he was a drug addict, and we ended up having to be homeless because his drug addiction kind of took all the rent money, and we had to pawn off the stuff that we had, and we were, like, sleeping in cars and storage units and stuff. Again, at the time, like, and he was very verbally abusive and, kind of violent, threatened my life and my mom and brothers as well. And at the time, I just was like, Mom, you gotta pay it, I can stay or he could stay, but this isn't working because he's threatening me and stuff. And so I moved out when I was 17. And, again, I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone, but I also understand, in a way, I see a lot of fear when there's a person making those kinds of choices, and almost as somebody that's really scared. And I guess, in a sense, when you can reframe it a certain way, you can, almost, you kind of feel sorry for them, because, like, it must feel terrible to treat people that way, or to live in that place. And so, in hindsight, I wish the best for him. It's not an experience. Well, I mean, I think it was character building for me, because that's what I took out of it. And it gave me a reference of being homeless to be able to help people in that scenario, and to go from, having nothing to putting myself through college to starting businesses, and to make that transition to be able to teach others how to do that. But, in hindsight, while it was a tough experience, it was part of what I needed to learn on the path that I'm on. And, to that degree, it's kind of indispensable. Like,
Mm-hmm.
would it have been my first choice? No, but it helped me to learn things that were for my own better good. So, I mean, in that sense, like, yeah, I guess I would have done it again.
I think you, first of all, I love everything of what you just said. Amazing. Amazing. And a good reminder on some of the experiences, the really raw experiences you went through. And this is a topic that you will definitely have. How could you not have challenges accepting others, and being at peace with the actions of other people, given what you've been through? Um, Love
I
it.
think.
And you make a good point in that it didn't make sense at the time,
Mhm.
the greater purpose of everything that had happened. but you can see how it makes sense now, even though it just seemed painful and pointless at the time, right?
I think the bigger challenge for me is since he was kind of like a stepdad and not necessarily like, we're all one big family, but like necessarily like a blood relative. I think for me, the bigger challenge is like my brothers that I'm very close to. When I have challenges with them, that's where it can be. It's like I have to do more work to get through that one and to see it as it is and how it should be.
Awesome. Okay. So one of the things that Joel had mentioned that is a really important part is to understand how others who have wronged us are suffering horribly. So that really helps us accept and almost it helps us to, instead of resenting people, perhaps pity them or give them silent sympathy. So some things to think about if somebody's wronged you, consider, might they be suffering horribly? Have they heaped unhappiness onto themselves? Could they be physically suffering from all of the tension? Could they be stuck in a mental hell of negative thoughts and emotions? Could they be struggling with the frustrations of their limited understanding? Might they be struggling with a guilty conscience for what they've done? And one thing to consider is that if they're not struggling with a guilty conscience, they're worse off because they can keep going further in the wrong direction on how to live. We might also want to ask, have they squandered opportunities? Have they disconnected relationships? Is it possible the magnitude of their unhappiness is even greater than the magnitude of their bad tendencies? When they hurt others, do they ultimately hurt themselves more? Also, might their negative tendencies continue beyond the grave, causing them to suffer horribly even beyond this lifetime? A concept applied from Yogananda is that physical scars perish with the body, but spiritual scars of anger and hatred go with you beyond the grave. For many incarnations, you come back to earth and create horrible suffering. So thinking about this and cosmic law and justice and karma that must eventually get paid, holding all of that in mind can help us to view these people with less resentment, and then maybe look at them the same way we might look at somebody who has a physical sickness or disease, that maybe they deserve more of our compassion and not less. So that's something to think about just on top of what Joel said. But here's what I want to ask people, and I just want to put this out here as a little bit of a question is, what does forgiveness mean to you? What is your rule on forgiveness? What does it ultimately mean? Steve, why don't you go first? What does forgiveness mean to you?
I think that's forgiveness is tough. I mean, there's a reason. I was actually just reading in the New Testament in Matthew, when Peter asked Christ, how many times do I have to forgive somebody? 7 times, and he says 70 times 7. And that's a lot of times, to forgive somebody, right? And I think we all know the point is that you don't do it once or twice. But, we also live in a society where you have to be wise with that, right? I may forgive somebody, but I'm not going to let a pedophile babysit my grandson, right? I mean, that's just stupid. I'm not going to do something foolish like that. But, people, to your point, Brendan, they're suffering with stuff, and everybody's got to pay the piper, at some point, whether it's in this life or the next life. But it's not our place to judge someone's final destination, right? And we don't know, maybe someone's just having a bad day, maybe they got a bad health diagnosis, maybe they lost someone close to them. I mean, it's really easy to cast aspersion on somebody, but the reality is that when we're talking with people we just come in contact with, like the jerkwad that pulled in front of me with a U-Haul trailer and made me slam on the brakes and smash eggs in the truck cab, who then laughed while he slowly pulled out in front of me. Is a sweet soul that probably didn't have enough help moving all of his crap. This is what I'm saying today. That's not what I said Friday. This is what I'm saying today.
Time is a healer.
Time is a healer.
Nice.
But, you know, I mean, the truth is everybody's going through something. And I think it's really hard if we're talking about betrayal by people close to us. We experienced that a couple of years ago, you know, some of our closest friends. And, you know, we're kind of back to where we, you know, can laugh and joke about stuff, but I'm not going to share the intimate details of the struggles of my family with that couple anymore and put ourselves out there in a position to, you know, be betrayed again like that. But we are at the point where they came to my birthday party, you know, 6 weeks ago, and we laughed and, you know, shared memories and all that. And it was really cool. But at the same time, you know, that hurt runs deep, and, you know, we're not quite back there, and I don't know that we ever will, but it's over. And it's way beyond just kind of a working relationship. And, you know, both camps are hard, right? Those really close to us leave deep scars when they wrong us or we perceive that they wrong us. And it's really easy to attribute, you know, evil to a stranger who we have no clue what's going on. And, you know, I, for one, don't want to be judged on a 4-second interaction with somebody based on how my day might be going.
Okay.
But it definitely takes a weight off, though. When you forgive somebody that has really wronged you, or you forgive yourself for something that you feel is really kind of severe. I've had those times when it was worth it, and I literally felt like I just took off a heavy backpack. I thought, why the hell didn't I do this sooner? You know, this was stupid. Especially for myself, why didn't I forgive myself sooner? You know, why am I always beating myself up over stupid crap?
Interesting. So I'm going to just try to articulate simply what I think you shared with us all is that forgiveness is kind of an acceptance that we all have our right to free will. But then with the way we choose to use our free will, actions can have consequences that ultimately must be paid. And even though we forgiveness is one piece. It's almost like dropping the resentment or the grudge. Reconciliation is something different. Trust still has to be earned. You can forgive somebody, but that doesn't mean you trust them. Forgiveness doesn't condone bad behavior or permit bad behavior, right? And it certainly shouldn't forego justice, right? If somebody has proven they can't be trusted in certain situations, well, then they have to accept that they have to earn that trust, right? So that's my high-level overview of what I think you just said. And some guy cut you off in an ice cream truck or something. Anyway, love it. Patty Baker, welcome to the call. Good to hear from you. Patty, I'm wondering if maybe you can comment on some of the disempowering or some of your thoughts on forgiveness and how people define it or what it means to them and some of the things you've seen or experienced in regards to the concept of forgiveness.
Well,
to other people.
I'm so glad to be here tonight, and I just love all of you, and I'm just so grateful to be here, and I'm humbled to be a part of this group. Every week I learn so much from each one of you, and just in this little snippet that I've been here, just volumes, right, from Steve. So thanks for sharing. Forgiveness is one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself. And I don't mean that from a place of self-forgiveness, but Steve kind of alluded to this a little bit. but when we forgive other people, there's a burden that's been lifted off of us. And I believe that's a gift, that when we forgive others, it's actually a gift to us. And when we withhold forgiveness, I've heard this commonly said, withholding forgiveness is really like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die from it. And because it doesn't matter if that person even knows that you forgive them, but it's just the release of that from you. Most recently today, I walked into this beautiful coffee shop I'd never been to before, and I was approached angrily by what I later found out to be the owner, who said, "Put on your mask." And I looked around the room and everybody does not have a mask on, like only him and the employees. And I go, "Oh, I'm sorry." I looked inside and I saw nobody had a mask. He goes, "You need to have a mask when you come in here." And I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." I said, "But I have a mask." "You need to leave." I said, "Give me just a minute. I have a mask in my purse and I'll walk out and put it on and come back in." And there was nothing I could do to like just mitigate what was happening and just neutralize the toxicity that was coming. But at some point, no matter how much is coming at me, I don't know how much this guy, like Steve said, in the 4-second moment that this guy's had to contend with for the day. But his reaction and his response to me does not define me. And so it's almost a shield of protection that I put on myself, because once I know who I am and I'm secure in who I am, then everything else around me doesn't really matter. So if somebody says, "Man, your hair looks really purple," it doesn't really bother me, right? Because I know my hair's not purple. But if they're like, "Man, you're really starting to get some grays." Okay, now I know I have a lot of grays and I may be a little self-conscious of it. So now all of a sudden that bothers me a little bit. So really, as we understand who we are and there's a place of acceptance for where we are, then really whatever's coming at us will pretty much bounce back to them. And hopefully that will be added with love, because that's what we're extending out from us. So that's just a little bit that I have to share about forgiveness.
Love it. Love it. And lots of great content you shared there. I think one thing is, it's kind of like no big deal what anyone else does to us. Like it across all space and time and eternity, it's not a big deal. There are other things that are more of a big deal, like our relationship with the supreme intelligence that's eternal and everything else. Like there are other things that are more of a big deal. This is not a big deal, right? You also talked about the benefits of forgiveness. I think one is peace of mind, because we're no longer recycling angry and resentful and bitter thoughts, right? Which helps us be more resilient in life. Conserves energy, because when the mind is relaxed, the nerves can relax. Science has shown health benefits: less meds, better sleep quality, reduced back pain, headache, and fatigue from forgiveness. Better immunity, because when stress goes down, immunity goes up. A good immune booster is just to love and forgive everybody, right? It also releases other people from guilt so that they can begin the upward climb to healthier thoughts and emotions. And for ourselves, one who is forgiven much, who forgives much, loves even more, right? There was an example where Gandhi was stabbed by somebody, and they were going to take legal proceedings against the guy that stabbed Gandhi. And Gandhi refused, saying, "I'm just going to send him my love." And later, when that assassin who tried to kill Gandhi found out, he became a follower of Gandhi. This is the guy that tried to kill him, but because Gandhi forgave him, he became a follower. And I think when we forgive others, we acquire wisdom and perspective that helps us forgive ourselves. The better we are at accepting others, the better we will be at accepting ourselves. So, and we have hope for a better future, because everybody is better off if we've forgiven. You know, when you give love and mercy, it doesn't weaken you, as we often assume. We hold back because we think it's weakening. It actually renews you. You know, it's like a mental and spiritual detox. And so even if we don't feel like releasing our grudges, you know, as Steve had quoted the Bible earlier, like we should consider doing it anyways to help us rise above the suffering and experience the joy of being with unity with everything. There's a saying that the wise man forgives everything, right? So, and you also mentioned that there's a cost to unforgiveness. You know, I think it leads to unhappiness. A vengeful desires destroy our peace of mind. The unhappiest people are those who are trapped in a world of bitterness and recrimination, right? It takes up energy and focus that could be used somewhere more useful. Robert Enright wrote the book 8 Keys to Forgiveness. And he said, I've got a quote here from him, when our inner world is disrupted, it is difficult to concentrate on anything other than the inner turmoil or pain. Suppose you are walking around on a sprained ankle. How is your focus on anything else as you feel the throbbing in the foot and leg? When holding on to hurt due to others' unfairness, we are emotionally and cognitively hobbled, right? It's like having that injury. The offenders usually become more hostile if we're hostile towards them. You know, meanness cannot be overcome by more meanness. Hatred isn't conquered by heaping more hatred on it, even though that's what we often do. Right? And you talked about it poisons us, like it poisons our system physically, emotionally, with our own venom, right? And our own thought habits. I think it's spiritually corrosive. It corrodes our character traits over time. It's hard to be in attunement with peace and harmony when we keep replaying and recycling these negative vibrations. And I think, you know, as hard as it can seem to forgive and accept, isn't it harder to live the rest of your life carrying a grudge and anger and bitterness and blame? Right? So I think those are all great points, Patty. Charmaine, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or anything you want to share on what we've discussed so far.
I've had lots of thoughts, but my most recent one triggers off something you said. We're talking about meanness and like piling meanness on top of that. And I was just, had the image in my head of when somebody's yelling and they say you should whisper because that makes them quiet so they can hear you. They instinctively quiet what they're saying so they're able to hear you. And it's the same kind of thing when we do something unexpected in return. Like when people are mean, they expect meanness in return. If you give them something other than what they expect, it kind of throws them off a little bit and they aren't quite sure how to respond. And suddenly they're not acting out of habit or how they would normally react. They are actually having to stop and process because you're being unexpected.
Yeah, love it. So I think shifting these patterns, it can shift from a spirit of combativeness to a spirit of cooperation. And I think, to further your point, only love and mercy can reform people. It's our only hope. And forgiveness itself is a sacrifice that holds the universe together. I think everybody wants to make the world a better place and they say that, but if you truly mean it, you have to forgive everyone who's wronged you. Right?
Well, that's kind of the supernatural response. I mean, people are expecting this human response. I'm angry, I'm mean to you. They expect meanness back. When you're giving them something supernatural or not what's expected at all, that's something different. And that's what people respond to, right?
Yeah. And I think, to really the only way to really change people ultimately, the best way is through unconditional love. You can inspire change better than you can demand it. Right? True lasting change. So excellent. So I have going back to what forgiveness means to people. To a lot of people, it's a matter of proving who's right and wrong. That's a disempowering way of looking at forgiveness. Or a lot of people look at it as a way of returning back to the state of being before the wrong action. However, there's a trap in that. If we just try to say, let's forgive and forget, let's sweep it under the rug, why is that a bad idea? Celine, do you have any thoughts on that? Why is it a bad idea to just say, hey, let's forget this ever happened?
Then you haven't dealt with the issues. You haven't dealt with the emotions and the feelings. And and it will come out in other ways when you lash out at other people. That's then that feeds the cycle and hurt other people.
Yeah, you nailed it. Absolutely. Really, what we're doing is we're bypassing the lessons that life and the universe has offered us. We're foregoing the learning and progress that is inherent in the situation so that we could potentially have been better off in our wisdom and understanding. And what we're doing is setting it up so that more troubles will continue in future. And really, the best way to overcome darkness is to bring in the light. And darkness thrives if we just sweep it under the rug and don't acknowledge anything happened, right? It's better to bring in the light of understanding and bring in a purity of understanding to the situation. There's a really, if you look at, I think that the forces of evil attack most through false reasoning and logic. And here's an example. I mean, everybody from the viewpoint of their own reasoning, nothing they do is wrong. But there was a robber who had 17 holdups, and he was interviewed. And he said that he committed all of those crimes with the intention that he would eventually pay it all back. And because of that, there was no wrong in what he did. And they've imprisoned an innocent man. And he's been in prison even though he's innocent, right? And that's the story he's telling, right? Now, he might have a worthy desire in that he was doing this to support his family, but his methods were wrong and created harm on other people. But the evil has come in through his false reasoning and logic. When we sweep things under the rug and forgive and forget, we are enablers for evil to perpetuate through false reasoning and logic, through errors in judgment that haven't been corrected, right? So that's definitely, we don't want to forego that whole process. So something else I want to put a question out there for is, whenever we have this issue with forgiving somebody else, right? The first thing I ask somebody is, what part of the problem is the problem? That's the most important question to ask. Okay, you got a grudge against somebody, you got some bitterness and resentment. What part of the problem is the problem? Right? Does anyone want to take an example and maybe take a crack at answering that? So think about it this way. Sometimes we're disappointed that people acted differently than we would have. So if Patty walks into a place and she's the only one not wearing a mask, she might say, well, if I was in your situation, I'd take a look at everybody else that's already in here that's not wearing a mask. Okay, why are you picking on me? What is it about? Because now you're going to make me feel judged, that there's something unacceptable about me, that you would make a target out of me, right? And why would you do it in this humiliating manner? Like, consider your delivery. Like, could you not just do it like, hey, excuse me, can I just speak to you for a second in private, and deal with it in a way that you're not using public humiliation? Like, I would never deal with it that way. That might be the part of the problem that's the problem. Right? What do you think, Patty?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. It's definitely a perspective that's there that I never really thought of. For me, I'm all about diffusing the situation in the moment. And once I pulled out my mask and I went up again, I'm the only one in there that has a mask on. That's a customer. And after I ordered my drink, he said, you can take off your mask now, when he gave it to me. So, and I said, actually, I wasn't being defiant by coming in without a mask. I just didn't see that anyone else had a mask on, but now I understand, the protocol. And so I apologize. So I take ownership for everything. And then I'll sort it out later, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. So there was nothing in that for me to feel like I had to forgive him in that. But from an outside perspective, you could definitely see like, no soup for you, you know. Like,
Of course, of course. Yeah, often in these situations, we might feel that fairness was betrayed if we are harboring unforgiveness. We might feel trust was broken, our ego was offended. I would say this, what I've come to learn in my experience, and I could be wrong, is that the greatest source of suffering in these situations is an unwillingness to accept people as they are and release our expectations of how we want them to be. We want them to be more advanced than they are because our life would be more comfortable if they were. That's what I've ultimately come to learn, just to simplify it. People have different ways of saying it and sharing it, but ultimately, if I say, is it this? They pretty much say yes, like every time. So here's a question I want to put out there, and just whoever wants to answer, by all means. Why is it unrealistic for us to have this need that other people be different than what they are or who they were? Why is this whole thing unrealistic? Wanting
Then we
others
all
to
start
be
looking like each other.
Yeah, we'd have eternal boredom if we're all the same. If everybody is going to be a carbon copy of us and act the way we want, yeah, it could be very boring. There's no novelty. There's no shock or surprise to life. Absolutely. Why else?
It also wouldn't challenge us to grow.
Yes. Yes. We are, if we're doing this, we're prioritizing comfort over progress. If we prioritize comfort over progress, that is one of the 7 deadly sins. That's sloth. It's the uncomfortable stuff that leads to greater growth in life. It's the uncomfortable stuff we do that eventually makes life more comfortable in a sustainable way. Right? So, excellent, excellent. Anyone else have any thoughts? Why is it unrealistic to need other people to be different than what they are?
Well, some people just, I mean, that doesn't account for different backgrounds, different upbringings, right? When I was 19, had a roommate that was from Louisiana, and everything was yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And I think I said yeah one time, and he's like, what is wrong with you? You don't say yeah, you say yes, ma'am, yes, sir, right? But I wasn't raised in the South. I was raised in the communist nation of Northern California, and we didn't talk like that. And I do now. In fact, I just had this conversation with one of my friends today. I try to say, please and thank you. I try to use someone's name if I see it at a restaurant or the gas station or whatever. But I wasn't raised to be disrespectful. We just didn't speak like, people would come out of the South. And so, I've changed my behavior, through all these years since then. But people have different upbringings. And, some of the people I deal with in my town here, I mean, we're a small county in Southern Oregon. And I always joke that it's Hazard County from the Dukes of Hazzard. And we've got a lot of simple people that don't, they're raised okay, but maybe they don't have a lot of tools for self-improvement and progression and dealing with things. And I mean, I was the same way before I went through UPW, where, I mean, there were a lot of tools that I pulled out of that I didn't have 2 years ago. And so if I were to get upset at myself, from 2 years ago, because I'm not behaving like I am able now, I didn't have the toolbox then. And a lot of people don't have the toolbox to handle what we think they should, just based on their experiences in life or their exposure or those types of things. And so we didn't all grow up the same in the same places, reading the same books, doing the same things, listening to the same music. And so we can't be expected that everyone's going to react the way we would, even though the way that I would react is correct and proper.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
actually a good thing I got from Tony Robbins as well is that sometimes people are doing the best they can with the resources they have, and just because they have a different set of tools, doesn't mean that we have to get on the same page necessarily.
here's a good question to ask. I'm going to ask you, Steve. You know the guy that cut you off?
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. If you had been through everything that guy has been through, would you have done what he did?
I don't know. I couldn't. I wondered,
The
kind of when it
answer
happened.
is yes, because he did.
Right. And what I didn't see is if he looked both ways before he pulled out. I think he looked the other way at the oncoming traffic that he was turning into, but not my direction that he was first crossing. And to be fair too, I don't know how much experience he has driving a big truck, because he had to come over 2 lanes to get in the suicide lane. And so he's dodging 4 lanes trying to get in 1 lane with a big moving truck that he may not have very
He's
much
never done
experience
before.
driving.
Yeah,
He'd been sitting there for 20 minutes and was so happy he finally made it.
Right.
exactly. And you make a good point. We all have our own journey, and we come from different places and experiences. And from our own point of view, we are always doing the appropriate thing in the moment. Every point of view is valid in its own way. His appropriate thing was, I'm just going to look here. That's all I got to do. Right. So,
What's the
but we
worst
can
that
learn
could
to
happen?
respect the reality of other people, even if, it isn't what we would have done under that situation.
I want to share about something that just came up in the United States this past weekend was, Memorial Day, if you will, for 9/11, the attacks on the United States back, 20-year anniversary back in September 11th, 2001. And a slogan that has been developed in this country is, "May we never forget." And back in 2011, I was in Ireland. My husband and I were traveling over there, and one Sunday we went to a church in Limerick, Ireland, and it happened to be on September 11th, 10-year anniversary. And this pastor preached on the United States in 9/11. And we did not look American when we walked in. Now, if we would have opened our mouths, we would have. But I mean, we didn't look American in this country. And so we're sitting there going, we must be the only Americans in here. They're talking to an Irish population. We roll up into this church. And this pastor said, as we look at this country, their slogan is, "May we never forget." But our prayer is for such a powerful nation in this world that has such a level of responsibility because they're a superpower, that they would be in a position to display forgiveness. So you talked a little bit earlier about forgive and forget, but and Steve, you mentioned on this that doesn't mean that you reconcile after forgiveness, and it doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for other people's actions, right? But forgiving and forgetting, that's difficult to go hand in hand. For me, I struggle with that, but I think that we can forgive. And as far as the East is from the West, not keep a record of it, if you will, to go back and continue to dig it up. But I think it's good to take a moment to pause and commemorate not what bad was done, but what good came out of it. Because I think in all situations, we can look for the good, even in the midst of the bad. And so even something as horrific that happened that for our nation, the United States, I think that there's good that came out of that. In a lot of ways, our country was unified in ways that it hadn't before. And there were a lot of other things that were put in place as a result. And I could go on and on about those things. May we never forget, but may we always forgive.
What's a valid point too? Like, why hang on to the garbage from it? Like, why not hang on to unity and coming together and people from different backgrounds supporting each other? Like, that's the stuff you want to remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it brings up another point that we can talk about is sometimes people may apologize and seek reconciliation, but they don't seem sincere. It's like they're looking for a get out of jail free card, or we question whether they're seeking a reconciliation. And an example could be this. An example could be maybe somebody was in a relationship and they messed around, and then they come back to you and they're like, oh, you know what? I was young back then. Things are different now. We all make mistakes. Let's just forget about it. And they imply that they're healed. Right. And I think this is an area where like the whole forgive and forget and let's kind of like move to reconciliation quickly. I think a lot of times people are looking for a shortcut that doesn't exist, or they're looking for a quick fix instead of a lasting solution that comes from a greater understanding. And I think there's a couple questions we should always ask. If somebody's seeking reconciliation, you know, just because somebody declares that they're healed doesn't make it so. Only time will tell. And we tell by what people do more than what they say, right? And for true reconciliation, there has to be trust. So one thing we should always ask that shows that they truly have healed is, have they made a sincere effort to fix what they broke? Yes or no? And if it's yes, where's the proof? People should understand that trust is something that they have to earn by proving rather than something they can demand, right? So we need to know that, you know, that a lot of people will do the crime and then try to get out of doing the time. You know, that if they were somebody who was creating gossip about somebody, they should have at least, you know, vindicated the innocent of any character tarnishment or discrediting, right? Have they restored justice in every reasonable way and proven they could be trusted? So that's one question. Have they made a sincere effort to fix what they broke? Number two is, has the offender been brave enough to confess their guilt? Where is the proof? A lot of times people will, in a cowardly way, try to say that, you know, I'm sorry for all of this situation that happened between everybody, but they're not really identifying and confessing their own guilt. They're trying to sweep it under the rug. And in that way, the evil can perpetuate itself into the future. Like, let's not expose what was done here, right? So question three would be, have they purified their intentions and motives? Right? So self-justification is not healing. Like, people can't just explain away what they did. Oh, I did this because of this, this, and this. And I'm like, that doesn't mean you're healed. Like, your motives are still selfish, right? Have you put in a sincere effort to seek out the truth of matters, or are you just interested in being proud and argumentative? Have you been clever enough to identify your problematic attitudes? Have you sought out a higher wisdom and understanding by a wise and worthy mentor, coach, or counselor? Have you learned all the necessary lessons to prevent future setbacks? Where's the proof? Have you put in the energy to overcome the source of the problem, or are you just trying to justify that you stay the same? So that would be question three, like, have they purified their intentions and motives? Question four is, have they purified their understanding? Self-understanding alone is not healing. They should have a higher level understanding of the values that they lived by at that time and how those values were limited, and the higher values they can now be committed to, right? So they should be able to grasp the context of what went wrong and why, and define how the problem originated and their role in it. So basically, we want to just kind of audit, have they done all of these things, or are they just looking for a shortcut that doesn't exist? Right? Does anyone have any thoughts on this subject?
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
Like, how many times have we heard that? Sorry, not sorry. I mean, it's sarcastic. Or how about this one? I'm sorry for my part. Okay, not really. like you're saying, yeah, but it's not really my fault. But I'm sorry for my part in it, and it's generic, and it kind of gets you out from underneath it, and so it's political, and so it kind of eases there.
Or I'm
So
sorry
I
if you
think,
felt this way.
yeah, I'm sorry if you felt this way, yeah, that kind of thing. So saying I'm sorry is a matter of being sincere, and I'm just kind of reiterating some of the points that you made, and then explaining what you're sorry for, and being specific about that, I think is important. Not only for you to be able to verbalize that and articulate it, but also for the other person to be able to receive it, because there's unresolved hurt feelings there that need to be acknowledged. And then the fact that you made the mistake, right? That this, and then it shows that you're taking responsibility and you're not making excuses. I did this, but I was feeling angry, I was hungry, I was hangry, I was pushed up against the wall, and it's an excuse to give a reason for why it was okay to do what you did in the moment, when really there is no excuse at this point. You're just apologizing, and this is the mistake that I made, so that you're not making excuse for it, putting the blame on somebody else or anything like that. And then something that you mentioned that I really like, although you didn't use this word, but you express regret because you're acknowledging their hurt. I am sorry that I hurt you, right? Or something along those lines. There is an emotional component that comes to apologizing, because there's something deeper there. So an apology that uses expressive language, that is, or language that's going to express that you acknowledge that they were offended. And then I think there needs to be a statement that, there's a wrong that needs to be righted here. So, I'm acknowledging what I've done, and now what can I do to make amends? Because I think oftentimes there might be nothing that we think that we can do, but maybe the other person just needs a hug. Like, I don't know what that is, but whatever needs to be righted, how can I make amends? This is the goal of apologizing, is to be able to not only talk this out, but walk that out. And then the last thing is to actually walk it out, because we all make mistakes. I mean, all sin, all fall short of the glory of God, and we've got to build trust again. Because like you said, I did it when I was young and I didn't know, I was naive, and now I'm past all that, I'm more mature, or whatever. The maturity comes in building trust by keeping your end of the bargain and following through with making the amends and seeking the restitution that's needed in the moment.
Amazing. Patty, you just crushed it. Look at this mouse drop. If I was outside, that would have been a chipmunk. Okay. Chipmunk drop instead of a mic drop. And I really love this. You talked about be specific in explaining what you're sorry for. This helps people get trust. How can others trust you've learned the lesson if you're speaking in generalities and you're keeping your own part kind of generic? You can't fix what you don't acknowledge was broken, right? So I thought that was a really key part that stood out for me. So lots of great examples of insincere apologies, right? Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Well, I think I said it before in the chat, I think, but people a lot of times just need to feel heard. And a lot of times it's not even that your offense has to be so bad, but if someone doesn't feel heard, or they, like Patty was saying, if they don't feel like you sincerely understand that they were hurt by something, the rest of it doesn't matter. If they feel heard, a lot of times that goes away. And with a very sincere apology, usually what happens for me is the other person will also apologize. They suddenly will feel their role in it and try to step up and say something. And it's not that we have to convict somebody else of it. We just have to own our part. But usually by putting it out there and being sincere, it creates a desire to reciprocate in the other person a lot of times. And that's, a good example to set for other people, and it can be contagious.
Love that. Great points. Great points. Another part I think that's good to consider is, do they want to be redeemed? So a lot of times people don't. They just don't want the consequences of their actions. So we have to be, there's a saying, I have it here, a weeping enemy promises everything with his lips, but in his heart he contrives deceits. right? So that's Proverbs 26:24. Okay, so sometimes people need to continue to learn by hard experience. But do they want to be redeemed? So are they interested in getting to the truth of matters? Or are they interested in being proud and argumentative? Where is the proof? Have they actually said to people, help me understand what I've done here? Help me understand other people's mental reality here. You know, are they willing to be completely honest with themselves? Because a lot of times people lie to themselves because it's a more comfortable reality if they can create a narrative that they're actually victims when they're perpetrators, right? A big example is when people do something so terrible and unjust to people, they often lie to themselves to convince themselves that the innocent person is worse than them, and so they're justified in taking that wrong action. It's a very common thing people will do. So they come out even more aggressively against the innocent, right? Are they willing to make changes? Where is the proof? So many people imply that they're going to change their ways, but do they ever commit with the proper level of effort and focus? Do they ever commit to an effective process? A lot of times people will say, I'm working on it. But what they've done is they've made their enablers their advisors. So they will turn to the people that always pat them on the back and convince them they're right, and they will get their advice from them and share with them. And then it just reinforces them in their wrong ways because people are just trying to soothe them in their confusion and misunderstandings. You know, I read somewhere that the only character change is really a long-term process and really doesn't happen unless people commit to some sort of long-term, minimum 6 months, like coaching, counseling, something that's more involved on a regular basis. So most efforts are insincere and ineffective, right? Are they really willing to make changes? And have they realized that change must be on the inside first through attitudes and principles? They might say, oh, I'm not going to do that again. And it's like, no. Change must have to happen with the attitude that led to you doing that in the first place. If you have the same attitude that this is the right way of doing things and you're just going to try to restrain yourself, that's not really going to make you trustworthy, right? And are they willing to try until they get it right? A big problem here is that people will try and make an effort to reform and redeem, and then it doesn't work out, and then they just completely go back to their old way of living. And they say, oh, I tried that already. It has to be a continual process. Ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, do they truly want to do the work to give up the pattern that created the problem? People enjoy having a big ego. They feel it gives them a sense of power and importance. They secretly enjoy all the attention they get from being the difficult person they are, right? They might believe that puffing up the ego is the path to success and happiness and ending suffering. And they enjoy the connection and attention they get from their life being screwed up. But self-honesty is needed for personal progress. And if they aren't motivated to progress in their understanding, then they likely won't be truthful with themselves. So ultimately, these are different questions to assess, do they want to be redeemed? There's a saying, when the fruit is ripe, it falls from the tree. With change and people, this is how it goes. But awareness of suffering is the ripening factor that makes people eventually ready for that change. So a lot of times people just have to suffer more before they change. And that's where enablers can come in and make things difficult, because people will surround themselves with people that soothe their discomfort, which just prolongs them carrying on in the wrong direction in life without stopping and getting directions on how they can live in a better way. So does anyone have any thoughts on this?
I think the last point that you made about they have surrounded themselves with people who are enabling them to continue to stay in that toxicity. That really resonates with me, and that's a good point. Just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah, and I think the enablers themselves, they value comfort over progress. They don't realize
no.
sometimes, as a matter of tough love, you need people to feel the pain and consequences of their wrong actions. And if you don't let them feel that, they don't get the lesson. And so their wrong actions and ways of living can be further intensified. So enablers need to realize that they can actually make things worse long term because they're delaying those lessons. Chris, did you have a point there?
But this is a strategy that the person is using to insulate themselves from the consequences of their actions. That the advisors are taking the heat for their actions. And they know that they've set this up where they're going to be loyal to them and, justify for them. And then they just run amok continuously, knowing that they'll take the heat for them. Also, so it can be intentional. So this person has no intention of getting better, getting healed, noticing what they've caused. It is a strategy because they're getting their needs met by acting the way they are and have found a way to not have the consequences affect them too much directly. They'll have to maybe put their, take a hit every so often, but nothing too hard, a slap on the wrist, and they move along. And they're used to getting that slap on the wrist, which is either minimal or moderate, and it's not enough to hurt them or move the needle that I have to change. So they're doing this intentionally, indirectly and intentionally. It's all manipulative. It's all indirect. And it's a way for them to meet their needs because they hadn't gotten their needs met when they were children. So now they've developed this system to get their needs met. And it's based on what their compass is saying, but really it's not leading them in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Now, I have another perspective I'm going to share with all of you. And it's this. There is nothing anywhere to forgive. Nothing anywhere to forgive. And by this, I'm expressing a healthy detachment from wanting others to be different than they are, and that forgiveness isn't necessary. And here's the perspective I'm going to share with you, that this whole concept of forgiveness is a criticism that implies a sense of superiority. There's more than one way of seeing things. We all have free will.
Say that again. Say that again. It was really good.
Okay. Forgiveness isn't necessary because forgiveness is actually a criticism that implies a sense of superiority. We all have free will, which means we all have the right to be stupid. Okay? Demanding forgiveness is a demand to take away other people's God-given right to be stupid. Okay? But how do we learn best in life? Through doing stupid things. Like a lot of times we learn the right way to live from living the wrong way. And in that way, the wrong way becomes the right way, right? There's many different paths to ultimate understanding of the truth of reality and the right way to live a human life. When we're demanding forgiveness, we're not respecting the path that somebody else is taking. We may judge that it isn't justified, right? But I feel like we're only really qualified to judge ourselves against living our own values and what we stand for. Other people have a right to live by stupid values and principles and misguided principles. They have a right to learn through hard experience what doesn't work. Their life is an experiment with truth. Who are we to say that they are not allowed to have that free will to experiment with truth? Now, mind you, asterisks. If they are stupid in a way that creates harm on others, we still must impose minimum necessary force to protect people against their stupidity. Okay? And we should still negotiate for justice against stupidity. And that ultimately there should be consequences for wrong actions, but people can still be stupid. Okay? And we can, but we can respect that reality. And instead of directing our thought energy to build a case on how they should be different, we should build a case on why we should respect them on being the way they are right now. Okay, because we're all doing the best we can with what we know. And when we know better, we do better. We're all a work in progress figuring it out. And we're all on different levels of our quest for understanding. And deep down, we're all going to the same place. We all have the same objective: lessen suffering and increase happiness. So other people are taking a painful way to get there, right? And they're maximizing suffering. Suffering is a friend and teacher, not something we should necessarily avoid. It is through the moments of suffering that we grow the most. It gets our attention, right?
I think there's a quote from Bill Gates. It's like a financially thing, but it says we don't learn anything from our successes. We learn much more from our failures.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that, my point is that, there are certain conditions that we should fairly put in place for reconciliation and trust. But forgiveness itself, I think we should just respect everyone's right to be an idiot, as I've done so many times in my life, countless times. Can't even tell you how many times I've done something stupid.
It's just you. Nobody else does anything stupid.
Yeah. But what are we saying when we say, no, you owe me an apology? We're saying it's okay for me to be an idiot, but you have to acknowledge it wasn't cool for you to use your free will in that way. So I'm saying you don't really have the right to free will, to learn through cause and effect.
So the guy today who's yelling at me because I don't have on my mask because I didn't know the rule in this place. I've never been there before, but when you go in and you don't have a drink, you have to have your mask on. But once you order, you still have to have your mask on. But once they give you a drink, then now you are at a position where you can take off your mask. I didn't know the rule. I know the rule now. Everybody else knew the rule, probably because of how the guy approached it. But I didn't feel the need to forgive him for anything because he's doing his gig. And so there was no offense there for all of that. And I ended up saying, hey, I wasn't trying to be defiant. I'm trying to diffuse the situation, but I'm not like, hey, he owes me an apology. Like that never even hit my mind. I'm just like, hey, whatever, dude. I'm ignorant in this situation. Obviously, I don't know the rules, so I'm good, and I'm the stupid one in the house, But the other side of that is, at some point, I can't explain what I'm trying to explain without giving you a story. Okay. I don't know why my brain works like that. I really try to not have it do that, but it does. So you'll just have to now sift through the story and tell the point. But here I'm going into this parking lot to go to this hospital to meet up with this doctor and his patient. So I go into the parking lot, but now I want to back into the space. So I pull up forward past the space and this car comes in behind me. And as I back up, they're right on my tail. I almost hit him. And they're like, wait, what is she doing? Because they thought I was going to pull forward into one instead of backing in. And now all of a sudden I'm backed in basically into them. They kind of got jacked about it. Okay. She didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know she was coming in like that. So she gets out of the car and I walk over to her and I said, hey, listen, I realized I didn't have a turn signal on. I didn't wait for you to stop until I backed in. You didn't know I was backing in, and I could have done that way better than what I just did. I just want to apologize for that. And she was like, thanks, because I'm telling you, this woman was hot. You should have seen Medusa. She was crazy when she got out of the car. Like evil eyes, like it was horrible. So I'm just diffusing the situation. I apologize for my stupidity. I walk inside. I've not been to this place before. My patient's in the exam room. I go check in. I go see my patient. And who's the doctor who walks in? The lady I nearly backed into. Okay. So now full circle, I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? At some point, I say the word diffuse, and if that includes an apology or that includes forgiveness or something, but I think there needs to be grace in that. And we've got to acknowledge our own stupidity when we realize it at some point for the sake of other people, because at the end of the day, for me, it's all about relationships.
Love it. Love it. So I think that's I'm going to articulate a few things that I got from that they're awesome. One is this: realize that even if a person did break one of your rules or standards, your rules are not necessarily the right rules, even though you feel strongly about them. We may not have it all figured out. We may not know the full story, even though we think we do. We may not know what is best. In fact, we learn and grow more when things don't go our way. So I think that was a really key point. Another thing is this: I think forgiveness, the only place it's really relevant, if you were to even say that, is on intent. On intent. And here's why. Are you going to be realistic and hold a grudge towards lightning for striking? Are you going to hold a grudge against the rain for falling? If a blind man if you're walking with a toddler and a blind man accidentally knocks a toddler over, are you going to impose justice by knocking that blind man to the ground? Is that what he deserves? If a kid picks up like a knife and goes to like stab you with it, are you going to take that knife and stab them to death with it? No. The intent, it's all about intent with a lot of these things. And I think what you're doing when in diffusing, you're clarifying good intent. And that's what can set people at ease. Hey, I'm just confused. But confusion is not a crime, right? We're all just, we're all just living our lives in the best way we know how and getting confused as we go. And I think, we're all on that road to ultimate understanding. Imperfect humans making mistakes as we try to figure it all out. We do things without thinking it through properly. We act out of desperation sometimes, or ignorance, or fear, or selfishness, or irrational impulse. Sometimes we choose to learn things the hard way. We all go through fear, sadness, pain. But in the end, we all kind of want the same thing, right? And we create our map from our life experience. Experience is the only authentic way people learn. We're unable to compare and choose a better way if we don't know any different. So we should accept other people for being confused. We've not been prepared to live a human life without flaws. We didn't get to study an instruction manual and get 100% on an entry exam before being birthed into this realm. We learn by doing. Everyone wants only the best. And I think a healthy way to look at it is that all expressions of the individual are an expression of wanting good and the greater good, even though our vices are kind of like misguided or harmful methods for trying to achieve a good end, whether that's love and friendship and security and safety and protection and all those things. We're all doing just the best we can with what we know in the given moment, right? And we have to respect each other's right to be ignorant. In fact, sometimes I think one of the things I'll do is I'll make a game of seeing just how creatively ignorant people can be with their justifications. I'll be like, that person's like an Olympic athlete at coming up with self-justifications. Did you see what they blamed now? Now they're blaming this. Now they're blaming that. First they were blaming COVID, and now they're blaming aliens, and now they're blaming something, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, they're like a gold medal athlete at remaining ignorant, So I think one of the things is that, looking on other people the way a concerned parent may look upon a child, because a lot of people are childlike in their wisdom and understanding. It's true. We'd prefer they weren't, but just look at all the stuff that's going on out there, and I don't think people intentionally turn to evil, nor do they really enjoy it. They're evil because they don't know the greater fulfillment of doing good. They don't have the wisdom and experience to compare and select the better choices. They fall under the influence of other people's opinions and temptations, and they're unconsciously led to living in evil ways, right? Which is why Jesus himself said, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. Some people are grown up physically, but infantile in wisdom. They're like human children, and so it's just kind of acknowledging that. You know, we're not as advanced as we would prefer we are. Right? And we can respect other people in living reality at their chosen level of ignorance. Right? Like they're choosing to live in that way. And a lot of times, I think the greatest thing that creates suffering is indifference to wisdom and understanding. If people had greater wisdom and understanding, they would choose to live in ways that don't create as much harm and pain. You know? But yeah, so and I feel like a lot of us would just do the same things other people would do. I often say there's a saying, I forget where it comes from, but it's like, for the grace of God, there go I. And it's like every time you see somebody do something completely dumb, it's like, yeah, you know what? If I'd been through everything they've done, I might have done that too. You know? But I think one of the things to think about is, even though people are capable of doing really bad things, I think one of the ways to make the situation better is to recognize their highest potential. You know, they still have the capacity to learn. They have the capacity to create a greater understanding. You know, lies can be replaced by truth. Wrong can be made right. You know, learn to recognize the highest potential in all of them. Even if you take a diamond and you cover it in mud, it's still valuable. The mud might be their misunderstandings and their confusions on how they choose to live their life. You know, but I think we have to be able to honor that deep down, they still have that capacity for brilliance within them and that highest potential, but they're not going to get there through our hatred and judgment. You can only reform them and cleanse them through astonishing acts of love and forgiveness. Right? And I think that's one of the secrets to being able to forgive and accept ourselves, is being able to come to that attitude towards others and see our own innocence as we stumble with our frustrations.
You know,
So-
I have these foster kids that are coming in here. And I received this phone call for one who is 12 years old. She was sexually abused in her home by a family member. And she was put into foster care at the age of 6, which was 6 years ago. She has since been sexually assaulted, abused, molested in foster care. And they have attempted over the last 6 years for her family to get their act together so they can get her back. 6 years. And they can't get it together. So now this girl at 12 years old has said, please don't continue to put me in a home where there's a man. Just find me a place where there's no men, I'll go. But, you know, now they're telling her, well, we're going to have to put you up for adoption because your parents aren't, you know, making the grade, you know, as far as being able to do what they need to do to get her back. So now this girl's been jumped around in foster care for 6 years. Now I'm the only one in South Carolina that is a single woman who can take this girl in, right? And now she's getting ready to be adopted out. So my question, this is not really a question, it's just food for thought. You know, so this girl has so much, she's been getting straight A's in school in hopes that she's good enough to be able to go back, right? So there's all of these things, and now her parents have failed her, the system has failed her, and now, you know, she's looking to come to me within the next few weeks. I think about these things in the place of forgiveness, because if I can't get psychologically this girl right in saying, hey, you know, I realize all the bad things are happening, forgive them, it ain't going to work, right? So there's a lot of other things that have got to happen there for her to be able to have some healing from this and be able to move on in a healthy way. So when I think about this in the place of forgiveness and stupidity and immaturity and the infantile behavior that's been, you know, that has happened toward her, and now the wreck that she's in, you know, I'm just throwing that out there as just another facet of, you know, forgiveness, I guess, in this whole situation that we're talking about as a topic.
I have some comments on this in particular. A different way of reframing it is to see the intent for love behind all actions. So I would say this, look, other people wanted love and they didn't know the right way to get it. They were confused. They could sense that you are such a loving being, that there is so much love in you. And so that's why they were all drawn to you. But it wasn't about you, it was about them. They were confused. And then I would create healthy detachment. I would say, look, how long ago did all this stuff happen? A year, 2 years ago, at some point in the future. And I might say, you know, all of the cells in your body have been replaced and turned over. And that wasn't really you. We're looking at the 2021 version of you. That didn't actually happen to you now. This is the 2021 version of you. And I would start to do some reframing like that, not to minimize the seriousness of what happened, but there are points of view that can be more empowering. And that's a very difficult situation because it's so easy to fall into the wrong way of thinking and seeing what's done to you as a weakness instead of seeing it as a reflection of your strength and your magnetism and the power of love that you have in this lifetime that other people can sense. And the, you know, everybody's on their journey and it's hard to resist judging the moment. But in many ways, as you're telling me this, I just can't help but think how blessed she is that all the things that have happened have led her on a path to have such a profound mentor and guide. I'm like, how else would she get to Patty Baker? Like,
There's no other way. There's no other way she would get to me. And I'm going to tell you what, I can't wait to see her success story as a result of it, because it's a blessing to me that these things have happened to her so that she can come here and I can give her everything that has been downloaded into me, into her. And that comes from each one of you, that you guys are also going to be pouring into her because you've poured into me. Right. And so I see that. But for her to have to then, for me to have to re-engineer and rewire and rethink, and like you said, the detachment that has to come from that, and being able to show that she is a loving being, that now she doesn't want to love people because she's afraid that then this is going to happen to her, you know, the fear factors that kick in. And so this is a difficult situation when it comes to forgiveness. And in the healing process for her. But I'm understanding where you're coming from, and I see exactly what you're saying, because I totally agree with you. It's a matter of transitioning that to a different level, at a different age bracket with a different set of circumstances.
Patty, can I share something with you? And my story, of course, is different, but something that is meaningful to me is the fact that I get to choose how I react to everything that's happened to me. And I think especially in situations like that, people feel like something's been taken from them. And I think if you choose to give in to some of those experiences and let that dictate your decisions going forward, then it's almost like you're being victimized again. Whereas you can choose what you decide to do from here on out. You can choose what you take from it. You can choose to, you know, look at it in a different way, or to recognize that not everybody is the same, but you're better than that situation, and they can't control your choices. They might have controlled an action in the past, but they can't control your choices going forward. And I've always found that to be really empowering, and I hope that's helpful.
I love the point of detaching from the situation and the the renewing of yourself, even from a physical level, and then empowering them from that point with regards to the choice. And I love the dynamic of how that dovetails together, because that sits well with me.
Yeah.
So thanks.
And I think, you know, one of the things to emphasize that's good, no matter what, is that they have the power to believe what they want to believe. They have the power to change what they believe. They have the power to focus on what they focus on. And they can change what they focus on whenever they want. And they can focus on the aspects of a situation that make them feel stronger and more in control. And they can choose what they do moving forward. And they can change what they do moving forward. They have the capacity for greatness within them. They have all the power they need. Now, mind you, she may experiment and explore different paths forward. She may explore the victim mentality and exhaust it to the full measure. She may do it for many, many decades even. But just know this, that even though it might not be our preferable, quick path to releasing and breaking out of this spell of suffering, even though it might not happen in the time that we would prefer it to happen, because we don't want to see people suffer. And, God bless her, like going through all of this, that, that when they come to change in their own time, in their own way, they will really be committed to it. We can't really inspire people we can't really demand people change their point of view and perspectives and the way they look at things, but we can inspire it. But then when they come to it in their own time, in their own way, after doing things the wrong way and experiencing different attitudes and seeing how that works out, then they will really be committed to it in a full way. And they will have wisdom and experience from this that will help them be a powerful healer in their life for others who have gone through the same journey that they've gone through in their life. They will have so much relatability and credibility and deep, profound wisdom to heal and release others from the suffering, the land of mental suffering and anguish that they're going through right now, once they get to the other side. And nothing will bring more fulfillment than to be able to help other people out in that way. I feel like, tremendous amounts of pain and suffering like this prepare people for tremendous amounts of being able to heal others and save others. How else can you get that necessary experience and credibility? She might end up becoming a powerful psychologist or counselor one day that heals hundreds or thousands of people. And at the end of the day, she might feel like this was a worthy sacrifice I made at the beginning of my life, when you consider the return on investment for the greater good that I made use of this experience.
It reminds me of the documentary "I'm Not Your Guru," where Tony does an intervention with the girl that was sexually abused again and again when in a religious cult, and how it just reframing that, like, she totally transformed and found an empowering meaning, and became a person that could help all the people that were suffering through that, to find a better way out of it.
Yes. I mean, there is a way out on this, definitely. And well, Patty, you have a heck of an interesting journey ahead of you, but you have your whole support team behind you here. Because learning to forgive and accept and be at peace with other people's misuse of free will is one thing that definitely brings us inner peace. It's how we win at the game of life, right? We don't really win when we're stuck in the level of vengeance, that, we decide not to forgive people no matter what, and we're seeking revenge, or we think that we can fix ourselves by harming other people, which is what many people do here. They will then go on to, I'm just going to break men's hearts for my whole life and screw them over, which is how some people react, right? Or I want those other people to suffer. Our happiness is not increased by creating pain for others. As the saying goes, nobody wins in a headbutt. And then we can get to a transactional level of forgiveness, where we think we create these conditions that must be met in order for us to release our grudge and release our anger and our bitterness and resentment. That's like level 2 forgiveness. But we're still surrendering our power to the other person. In addition, there's always an undercurrent of doubt on how genuine other people are on their admissions. If we say, well, you have to do this in order for me to forgive. And then there's level 3 is unconditional forgiveness. At this level, we forgive what was done no matter what, and we expect nothing back. And we realize we transform and elevate ourselves for the better when we choose unconditional forgiveness. It renews us. It renews our mind. And this is all about just respecting that everyone has free will. Who are we to put limits on? Everyone has a right to be stupid, right? But we live in an existence of cause and effect, and there's karma and there's consequences, but everybody has their right to be stupid, and we can love the ignorant as they choose to be ignorant and respect them on that level. Okay, let's go to key thoughts and takeaways from tonight. Key thoughts and takeaways. Why don't we start off with Chris? Chris, are you there? Chris might not be there at the moment.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, Chris is here. Okay, Chris. Key takeaways.
Key takeaways with forgiveness. Warning, do not use forgiveness as a way to prematurely defuse or de-escalate a situation that needs to escalate, that needs to reach that level of forcing a reckoning with God or a reckoning with Jesus, or making that situation come to a head. It is easy to use forgiveness as a cop-out instead of challenging that person to take care of themselves. As we were talking about the person who needs the insulation to continue to do those bad things, but they do not actually change themselves. Every time you use forgiveness, you're giving them a get out of jail free card. If you give that card too soon, it's not going to work. Just like playing poker, you show your hand in the first round, you're toast. You have to wait until it's a proper time to start showing some forgiveness. You don't see fighters congratulating themselves on a great fight before the fight. It's usually after the fight. So timing, sequence, timing, intensity of situation has to build just like a pressure cooker. It has to reach that percolating point, that boiling point. You avoid that, you screwed yourself, you screwed that person, you wasted your fucking time with the whole thing. You have to make them feel that pain. You have to make them feel that embarrassment to make them understand the pain that they are producing for others. Then you can work on the forgiveness. Then you can talk about negotiating. Then you can talk about those things. But before you reach that point, if you forgive too soon, it's a cop-out. And this is what I was talking about in the beginning about the intensity of this forgiveness. There's a situation with Steve and the eggs and Patty with this other woman who has a much more intense situation with, quote, forgiveness, because her situation is not about forgiveness. Her situation is about her healing herself, changing herself, and becoming stronger. She needs to be on this side of the hill, not on the forgiving side of the hill yet. So that's one thing about takeaway as far as forgiveness is concerned. Forgiveness has its time, has its moment, just like every card in the deck. You play that card too soon, it's no good. You play it too late, it's still no good. It has to be at the right timing, right sequence, right intensity.
You know what? You made amazing points with that. So good and so profound, yet so that people don't talk about it because they always want comfort. Hey, let's just forgive and move on with our lives. And it's like, no, you just gave away the gift of suffering, the transformative gift of suffering. Tough love requires we give people the space to suffer so that they can learn the lessons and purify their understanding and purify their motives. You're taking it out of the oven too soon. It's not cooked. It's not ready yet. I love it. Well said, sir. Well said. All right. Charmaine, key takeaways.
Well, I think what's coming to mind tonight is just about sincerity. And I think so often whenever conflicts arise, sometimes, we're too quick to try and resolve things or trying to share a perspective. And really, we just need to approach situations with a great sincerity, trying to actually relate to each other instead of worrying so much about all of the details. Sometimes it's a matter of learning to hear the other person. And the more we can be sincere in a moment and really try to listen, I think the more that helps.
Love it. Love it. Well said. Steve Smith, key takeaways from tonight. Last closing comments, whatever you want to say.
I think, just remembering that we're all here because we all fought for a right to have our free will. And, all of us use that wisely, and sometimes we use it stupidly. And, I think for me, it's just a reminder of, you got to give people the benefit of the doubt, because I want them to give me the benefit of the doubt, right? When things aren't going my way, or I'm tired, or I'm distracted, or whatever it is, and I act like a jackass, or I'm insensitive, or whatever, I want that grace and that forgiveness from people. And so I need to be willing to give that to people much quicker than I do most of the time. And so for me, it's just a reminder that, what, people do them and I do me, and stay in your lane and I'll stay in my lane, and and then we're good. And we don't always stay in our lanes, but for the most part, just that's how I feel like living with just neighbors that maybe have different ideas or do different things than I do, is just do your thing and don't tread on me, and I'll do my thing, and I'll try really hard not to tread on you. And and then we can coexist and do our own thing and live, try to figure out how we most effectively, are going to walk our path in this life.
Yeah, so coming to agreement on intention, right? And that's what I said. Usually what we need to forgive is somebody's intention. They actually had the intention to create pain. They had the intention to make things difficult for you. Sometimes difficulties come, but it wasn't intentional, right?
Right.
But yeah, because I think a lot of times forgiveness just comes down to purely intention. Well said. Joel.
Steve, but if you just try to make it easy for them and then make it easy for you, like you're robbing yourself of the growth, because we have to make the stupid choices to get the growth possibility. Maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of really good takeaways. I loved what you said about approaching it like a concerned parent. I think a lot of times we take things too personally, and self-justification is a huge thing, like who's right, which we talked about. But when you have that, like, pull back as like a parent would look at it, like when you talked about, the blind person knocking over a toddler, like a lot of these people, they're doing the best they can with the resources they have. Like if they had better resources, they'd probably make better choices, myself included, everybody included. So yeah, I just love the concerned parent analogy. I love Patty just talking about to the point of just getting to where you're not taking offense. I think that's ultimately, and Brendan, you alluded that too, it's an awesome way to live where, you just, it doesn't mean to become a doormat, but you just don't allow yourself in an unproductive or unhealthy way to be offended by things that you don't need to take offense to. I love how Patty diffuses things and just tries to get cut down to like, what's really going on here? How can we get on the same page? Like, it doesn't have to be a personal thing. And then, I was reminded of a story. We talked about one of the Bible stories. I love the one where, Jesus, he's sitting up there being tried for something he didn't do. And they're like, deciding whether or not to put him on the cross, and they're like, hey, they see Peter out in the crowd and they're like, hey, you're friends with that guy, right? And they're like, no, I'm good. No. And he does this 3 times, right? So he denies him 3 times. And, so 3 days later, Jesus overcomes death in the tomb. He doesn't be like, hey, Peter, what's up? Like, I need my due now. It wasn't about like this personal sense. He just said, do you love me more than these? Then feed my sheep. He didn't make it about himself. He made it about like, do the better good, like be the better person. And I love it when you have reconciliation that's bigger than just like who's right and making people feel better. But like, it's fertilizer for being your own best selves when you can, get to that point and not have to like, just make it about petty stuff, which was what it all, it is a lot of the time at a lower level. So yeah, just getting to the point where we don't need forgiveness, that, we're all allowed to make poor choices and it has the capacity to move us forward, if it's taken as such. Yeah. And just a lot of really good stuff. Cause I think this is a conversation that we all deal with in different aspects. And some of us are better than others at, putting the rubber to the road when the stuff hits the fan. But it's a really a necessary skill in life. Otherwise you just end up being, miserable if you hold on to all the junk that you could choose to hold on to, or you could choose to let go of and learn from and help other, and take the higher road and help other people to grow as well.
And what I love about that is you brought in a role model and you discussed Jesus, right? And one of the things that I think is important to acknowledge is that Jesus scolded the hypocrites, which is what Chris talked about. You got to heighten the pain to get people's attention sometimes. But he was compassionate towards those who sincerely wanted to get better, no matter what they've done, right? And if we're going to look at who are we going to role model, and I think in human history, Jesus is definitely stands out as an all-star when it comes to mercy. I also don't think Jesus had to say what he said. I don't think he had to say, Father, forgive them for they know not what they did. Not somebody of Jesus's understanding. He would know that already. He didn't do that for himself and God. He actually did it to just role model how we could be towards others. Yeah. That's why he didn't need to say that. He knew what was going. He knew they didn't know. God knew they didn't. He's like, why do you even have to say that? He didn't. Somebody of that understanding didn't have to say that line.
I love too that when they're coming to apprehend him, and I forget if it's Peter, whoever slices off one of the high servants' ear, and this is the guy that's coming to like take him away to put him to death, and he heals the guy. And it's like, that's the kind of example that we should set, that always in life we take the higher road.
Yeah, and that he's respecting the right of that person to live at their current level of ignorance. He's like, look, you don't know who I really am. And, you got a family you care about. You're trying to make a living and you're taking the orders. And it would be stupid for you in your current situation to not take me right now, right? As much as from a higher level of understanding, this might not look like the right thing, but he was really respecting other people's rights to be stupid. He was saying, look, you guys are going to do the stupidest thing. I've been loving and healing everybody. You're going to kill me now? This is so stupid. Okay, go ahead, do it. Really. Great points. Patty.
One line from tonight I'm going to have to ruminate on for the rest of the week because it was just so good, was criticism implies a sense of superiority. And I just love that line. It has so much depth into it. I just can't wait to meditate on that and walk that out this week. It's powerful for me. So I love it. Awesome. And Brendan, what about for you? What was your key takeaway for tonight, or any closing thoughts that you have?
Closing thoughts. I might add a couple of my forgiveness role models in addition to Jesus, who's a big role model on forgiveness. One of my favorite forgiveness stories is Yogananda. There was a time when, his last talk at the Biltmore Hotel, there was a guy who for many years had spoken against him as saying he was a fraud and this and that. And so Yogananda was going out to give a key address at this major talk. And he went up to that guy, and it was the first time they had met in person. And they kind of thought, what's going to happen? This is his biggest critic, said all these mean-spirited things about him. And he walks up to the guy and he's like, just remember, I'm always going to love you. And a photographer captured that moment. And you can see the person look up with a mixture of surprise and wonder. Like, what? You know, that's his comment against his biggest hater. You know, like, and then not only that, but Yogananda gave his speech, and as he made the last line in his speech, he dropped dead in front of everybody as such a like a poetic, epic exit. And that was one of the last things he did before he died, right? And so you just think about the impact of that. Another example I really love is King Henry, okay? King Henry had this custom of asking that a cup of wine be set aside for him in case he woke up during the night and wanted an aid to sleep, right? So King Henry had this tradition. So one evening he asked the steward to bring him his cup. And the steward was very shamefaced and confessed that he drunk it all himself, right? It was like really apologetic. So if you think about like ancient times and how kings were and unruly, like they could have just said off with your head and everything else. But King Henry said this. He said, from now on, set aside 2 cups of wine every night, one for me and one for you. Like,
That's true.
that's how this king responded to that. Like, not angry, just totally accepting the reality, but he was doing what Jesus would do and show compassion for those who are sincere. And this steward was sincere, like, I drank your wine. You know, like, so I think a lot of this comes down to, I think forgiveness, as you'll call it, and I think we just need to get to a level where forgiveness isn't even necessary, but I think forgiveness matters because our souls deserve peace. And when you forgive, it enables the true beauty of your soul to be expressed to others, as it was with King Henry in that moment, and Yogananda in that moment, and Jesus in that moment on that cross. It was the opportunity that mercy gave, the opportunity to express the true beauty of the soul to the self and to others. Because I think at the end of the day, you know, we all put on these flesh suits and came into this reality. We're all here to climb that mountain. And that mountain is understanding. And we get to different levels in our understanding and increasingly higher levels of understanding. You know, at the bottom, it's very egotistical, but then we get to higher and higher levels of understanding. That's our journey, whether people realize it or not. We're all on a quest for self-understanding. And until eventually we reach the truth of reality and we're set free by realizing that it's nothing but love at the end of the day. But this is just one of those levels of understanding in which we can move higher in our own beingness. Being able to create that skill of truly loving and accepting everybody. So, all right. So I thought you were all a 10 out of 10 out there today. Totally awesome in terms of everything everybody brought. And once again, this talk is a gift to anybody else who tunes in to watch the recording in whatever capacity. This is our gift of love and wisdom for you to help you out in your journey, as our way of respecting you and your right to be stupid as we go out and do stupid things in our journey and learn the right way of living through our wrong actions. But we're all explorers together, experimenting with how to make it all the way to the top. Let's do a go team on 3, fist bump, group hug, we're out. All right, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Go team!
Go team!
Go team! Go team!
Group hug!
Have a
I
great
love you
week,
guys.
Have
See
an
you
awesome
next
week.
Monday.
Love you too.
Week.
Oh, yes!
Yeah.
Be blessed.